Welcome to the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Mike DeHaan and Dan Austin. From wins, losses, horror stories, and tactics for optimizing your business, Mike and Dan take a real, uncensored deep dive into the ins and outs of running a full-time real estate investment and wholesaling business.
What's going on, guys? On this episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast, we have Michael Wagman, who is a previous flipper, now big-time investor with 500 units and $70 million worth of real estate in his portfolio at only the age of 31. So youngin'. Michael, well done. Youngin'. Welcome to the show. I know you're younger than both of us, which sucks because I feel like I'm usually the young guy. But I just turned 32 like last week, so
I'm basically mid-30s, halfway over.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, so awesome, man. Like that's pretty impressive growth. So, I guess what's your story and how exactly you put it all together?
Thanks for having me. I guess. Do you want to hear about before flipping or starting from there?
I do, because I feel like it's going to be super intriguing.
The whole thing, man.
All right, well,
yeah, I mean, you show up with gauges and tattoos. I absolutely want to hear about what it was like before you got into the business.
Is that an insane clown posse in your background? All I can't see. Is that like a clown or something?
That's Dimebag Daryl.
Okay, I can't see it. It's like a little blurry. There you go. Nice, dude. Hell yeah.
I grew up in California. I went to school out there, and when I graduated college, I mistakenly just thought that there would be jobs waiting for me. You know, it would be that simple.
That was me too.
Yeah, my degree was in global studies, international relations, and I was like, this will be great. You know, degree. I felt like it wasn't worth the piece of paper it was written on. But anyways, I actually went back to LA and I was looking for jobs for probably 6 or 8 months and couldn't find anything and just decided to jump ship. And I moved out of the country and I lived in Israel for 3 years. And when I was over there, because it's like high tech capital of the world, there's more startups per capita than anywhere else. If you can speak English and you can sell over the telephone, you're basically infinitely employable. So I pretty quickly found myself working in high tech sales, for like SaaS companies and making really good money for a 22-year-old. I did that for about 3 years. And there's kind of this cycle there where, you know, a lot of startups come and go. And what a lot of people do is you work at one for a year, or maybe the product doesn't work so well anymore, and you jump to another one, you increase your salary little by little. And I did that for about 3 years and had a little pile of money saved up. And, I had a decision. I could either jump to another company and do this all over again, or I could move back to the US and try and do something with the money I saved up. And while I was in Israel, my mom had moved to Florida, like a lot of older people do. And in Florida, you can buy a house for less than $100,000. In California, you can't even buy a room for that much. So basically, I ended up moving to Florida and I bought my first house. I was watching too much HGTV at the time, and I thought I could flip better than these guys. And, I made a lot of mistakes.
Right on. So what age were you at about this
25.
time? What? That's 3 years after 25? Okay. So you bought your first house, and that was a primary residence? Like, did you just buy it to live in?
This was a 2-bedroom, one bathroom house in Daytona Beach, Florida. It cost $66,000. I paid all cash for it, all of my own cash. I had never heard of other people's money at this point.
Right.
And I just knew I wanted to flip a house. So that's exactly what I did.
So did you actually move to Daytona Beach?
A little bit south of there, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Great little town.
Okay.
It's a good party city.
all I know is Florida's been super mixed every time I've been there. It's either like retirees or it's like real questionable people or it's party town.
That's exactly what driving on the roads in Florida is like. They're either going in a 60 or they're going 90 in their tailgate. So.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, okay. So how'd you find that first deal? So
it was on market, because I had never heard of wholesalers. I had never heard of Bigger Pockets. I literally was just watching HGTV. I was 25 and I thought, well, I might as well get my real estate license since I don't, know anything about real estate. That's how it'll work. And I just became a realtor and found the house and bought it.
Okay. So how'd you know it was a good deal?
I didn't at all.
I love it. You're like, I think I'll sell that one for more.
It was everything about my early success was just sheer stubborn ignorance and willful, desire to succeed. I bought the house. I knew it was run down. I knew it was a piece of crap. I knew kind of how comps worked, but I'm sure that my estimation of what the ARV would be was totally off. And all said and done, I put about 20 grand into the renovations. I was into it for about 90. I think I sold it for 117 and I walked away with 13 grand profit in 6 months worth of work. And I did all the work with myself and one handyman too.
Oh,
yeah.
$2,000 a month.
I mean, that's not the worst though. So my very first property I flipped, it was kind of a similar situation, but I had a money partner and I spent 5 months and I made $4.5 grand.
Yeah.
But the thing is though, at least you made money, and this is like the number one, I guess, tip that a lot of people give that come on this show to new investors is to just jump in. That's exactly what you did, and that's exactly what I did. That's what Dan did with his first investment. Dan's first investment property before I even got into real estate was this like college property that he bought, and he actually let me live there because I just moved back to this area while he like DIY'd adding a basement with all these bedrooms and stuff to this thing.
Can you believe that?
Kind of had an idea what you were
YouTube
doing.
University, everybody says YouTube, but you're right. It's like just jump in and do it. And that's how you all get started. And that's how the most successful people get started, because what happens is a lot of folks might say, and I've ran into these people, they're like, oh, I only made 13 grand. I just gave up. That wasn't worth my time. It's like, well, you just said you got a college degree that wasn't worth the paper that's on it. You got paid 13 grand to get a college degree in flipping houses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or what's even worse than that guy who makes 13 grand and decides not worth his time is the guy, we see this a lot with new investors, especially last year. They're like, oh, I don't want to buy anything if I'm not going to make at least 35,000, or I'm not going to, make like a 25% ROI. It's like, how you haven't even done anything yet. You have no right to be making such bold claims.
The second house I did, like I was motivated after the first one. So I did exactly the same thing again. It took another 6 months and I made 30 grand on the second one. So that's 43 grand in a year. It's kind of, you could work a regular job or you could do that, but getting paid every 6 months wasn't working for me. Right. So that's when I had to start learning about other people's money and listening to Bigger Pockets and sort of getting an actual education on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, perfect. So you started, that gave you the little bit of the bug a little bit. You decided you're going to start learning. So I guess what were the action steps that you took? Because obviously at this point, we're still really, really far away from your current status of 500 units and $70 million portfolio.
Right. Well, so, the action steps at that point was listening religiously to the podcast. Everywhere I drove all day long, listening to all the old episodes, really taking it upon myself to get an education and just, I stuck with it. I ended up moving all across Central Florida. So I was in Tampa Bay and I was in Orlando. But the next smartest thing that I did after flipping for a while is I actually house hacked. So I bought a 4-unit building and I lived in one of the units. And that was probably the greatest decision I ever made to steer me down this path. Yeah.
That was kind of your first foray into understanding kind of the idea of passive income, I'm assuming.
Yes, it was, because I was living for free, and then I ended up buying another 2 duplexes and renting those out long term. So I had a little 8-unit portfolio going in the Tampa Bay area.
So was that directly because you started educating yourself? You probably listened to Bigger Pockets. You probably learned house hacking. Is that kind of where that started? Was that like that pivotal point in your life?
So I was making enough money from the flips that I was just completely obsessed with real estate. So I tried to do everything. I was acting as a realtor for all my own deals. I tried being a realtor for other people. That sucked. I tried wholesaling. I mentioned that to you guys. That sucked. I moved out of the 4-unit building and I did Airbnb with that unit too. So I was just like, let's try every single avenue of residential real estate investing that we can. And then eventually I started learning about multifamily, and that really got us to where we are now.
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So you went through the whole process of, you said wholesaling, you said all of it sucked. Like, what part did you not like? Was it the sales process? Was it just dealing with like the weird people? Was it like how expensive it was? Like a lot of people don't like the shady nature of wholesaling where you're like, assigning these deals for profit and it's not always necessarily clear to the sellers. Like, what was your
Well, I should clarify, I never had any success at wholesaling. I definitely tried to do it for like a couple months, and definitely an element of, the weird people was a big deterrent for me. And I don't know, I think I just had a bigger vision than going into some real redneck backyards in Tampa Bay. I don't know. I thought it was more glamorous at the time, and it deterred me.
No way, man. It is. It is like
gotta be in the trenches.
Yeah, it is like the frontline trenches of real estate investment, man. The stuff that we've put up with on like a regular basis is outrageous. I mean, even like with people that are somewhat put together, like we're currently dealing with this the situation right now where we had like a off-market deal that we bought, and now we're like, it was like a seller finance deal, and now we're having to go head to head with like all these like legal things with the seller, because they don't want us to, the holder of the note, they don't want us to sell the property. And so it's turned into like a whole freaking nightmare, right? Or like we wholesaled the deal last week where our buyer, this was on them, this was their fault. They did not swap the locks the day the deal closed, and they showed up on Monday to start working, and the seller's son had moved in.
Sellers do that in off market. They show back up.
Yeah.
It's honestly the truth. You got to board that shit up.
Well, and I don't know what state that was in,
move back in.
Squatter laws can be really rough depending where you are.
Yep.
Yeah. We're in Washington, dude. It's about as rough as it gets.
Besides California, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, cool. So you kind of did your licks, and then by the time you got into multifamily, I guess, what did your portfolio look like at that point? Were you financially free? Because like multifamily is tough. It takes a long time to start getting a paycheck.
So what I did is I moved to Arizona in 2020. Obviously, pandemic happened. It was a crazy year for a lot of people. I had already kind of started educating myself, getting the bug about multifamily by that point, but everyone was freaking out about their jobs. And I was just sitting back collecting checks for my rentals. I was like, okay, this is the answer. I need to dedicate some time, figure out how I'm going to do this. And then the market started appreciating like crazy. And I kind of wish I hang on to my properties a little bit longer, but I ended up selling all 8 units and walking away with a decent amount of cash, and I used that as my seed money to get to where I am now.
Nice.
So
when you say seed money, was that you were actually putting things under contract, or just to start the actual business of multifamily?
Earnest money, because
gotcha. You got to have earnest. That's right.
You got to have earnest money, and I did a mentorship. I paid for it. I'm grateful for that because I met my business partner through it. And, here we are now 2 years later. But I think all said and done, from the time I started learning about multifamily to actually closing on the first deal was probably 15 months later. So it was
that's a long lead time.
Yeah. It was May of
21. It's a long time, but I mean, it seems about on point.
May of 21. Yeah.
Okay.
So exactly a year and a half.
Do you want to share the mentorship?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Do you want to share the mentorship that you?
Yeah, it was RE Mentor. They're kind of the biggest, the oldest. They've been around the longest. All the Rod Cleefs of the world are all like Dave Windall disciples. So.
Mm-hmm.
And
nice.
I can say good things and bad things about it, but at the end of the day, I'm the kind of person where if I pay tens of thousands of dollars for a mentorship, I was never going to let myself fail. There are tons of people who do mentorships who, pay the money and they never even get out of the LOI phase. And that was just never going to be me. So I made it work.
Take some tenacity too.
And that's every group too. I mean, even looking at like GoBundance, right? There's so many people that come in there and they, pay their 10 grand for the year, and they don't actually network with people. They don't go to any of the micro tribes. They don't do anything with their pod. They don't go to any events. And then lo and behold, they're surprised when they don't get anything out of it.
They get mad about, they get mad the program wasn't good enough. It's like, there are definitely some fly by night programs that aren't worth your money, but there's quite a few out there that if you put your time and effort into it, you will get what you will get out of what you put into it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's important you find ones that are doing stuff you want to do as well. So like you want to do multifamily, so you found a group for that. People that want to like find off-market real estate or like sort of real estate business. That's what Dan and I's Instant Investor program is about, right? It's about setting up the marketing systems, doing all that sort of stuff. But if someone came to Dan and me and was like, hey, I want to learn how to be a mobile home park investor, we're like, cool. Yeah. We're not those guys that are going to teach you that.
Nope, we're not. Not even going to pretend to.
Yeah. Exactly.
I want to go back real quick to this first
awesome.
deal that took you 15 months. What did you do So you obviously joined a mentorship program. What did you do for 15 months until you got that first deal under contract?
Well, it was a process. So the interesting thing about my mentorship is that when you're in it, they're telling you you can do everything. You can, go talk to the brokers, underwrite all the deals, source all the capital, do all the asset management, arrange all the finance. Like you can do it all 100% by yourself. And the truth is that almost no multifamily deals work like that. In fact, if you're completely green, you cannot just get into a multifamily deal unless you're paying cash. Because in order to get the loan in the first place, you have to meet liquidity, net worth, and experience requirements. So it's really a team sport. And I had a couple things going for me. One is that I had the earnest money to be able to put down, and I had some capital connections, and I had some sponsor connections. And then when I met my business partner, the things that he had was area knowledge, underwriting expertise, and broker connection. So we kind of came together and really complemented each other in that way. Because before that, I was flying around, I was flying to Tennessee and South Carolina and Georgia and all these different places looking at deals, but I had no real area knowledge or expertise or anything like that in any of those markets. And with multifamily, it's so specific. You need to understand the submarkets so well. And in order to get the broker relations, you really have to milk that for a while and know all the brokers in a given market and get them to, know, like, and trust you and believe in your ability to close. So he had all that. And, it just came together synergistically.
Perfect. So you say you had capital connections. I'm assuming that means you knew people with money that you could raise money quickly.
Yeah.
And then as far as sponsor go, can you explain what a sponsor is for these types of deals?
So a sponsor is basically somebody with enough experience, schedule of real estate, and meets all the requirements of the loan, which typically for multifamily loans or commercial loans means you have to have a net worth equal to the value of the loan. In the case of our first loan, I think that was about $3 million. And there's also typically liquidity requirements as well, which can be different. So somebody needs, in order for you to be able to get the loan in the first place, somebody needs to have your back who's been in this industry already.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah. So you truly is a team sport. You brought in the broker connections, you brought in the capital, you brought in the sponsor, which is really, it's great to have the experience on your team, but also you just have to have it from a lending perspective. Right. And then I'm assuming, go ahead.
We were very lucky in the sense that the guy who actually got us the loan was willing to sponsor us. And so that's the person I knew. So it really worked. Great. And to this day, he's still on like 90% of our deals. Like he's our guy. Yeah.
And you give him a position, I'm assuming a general partner stake in the equity.
Yeah. Well, it's a really sweet gig if you're in a position to be able to sponsor loans, but you're also taking a huge risk because typically a sponsor will ask for somewhere between like 20 to 40% of the general partnership. In our case, it was 30 for the first deal. And they don't really have to do a whole lot, but you can't do the deal without them.
Right. And then the deal goes south. Yeah, right. That lender's knocking on their door.
Exactly. Right. So there is quite a bit of risk involved. If you don't trust the people, if the people who are so green and you don't trust them to get the job done. So he took a risk on us. I like to think it paid off well for him.
Right. You're still here.
Yeah. Well, it all just goes back to that triangle that you need for every real estate deal, right? You need the money, you need the knowledge, you need the hustle, right? And everyone that can, if you can provide one of those things, you can get into a deal. If you can provide more of those things, you can obviously have a larger piece of the deal. So are all those connections you made, were all those through the group, or how many of those did you establish beforehand?
What do you mean? The business partners or the financial connections?
Just like everybody. That's a pretty large.
So that is a true advantage of joining a mentorship, is that it's not really about the education, it's about the network. So I've met some amazing people 100%. Through it. The sponsor I met through the network, the business partner I met through the network, a lot of our current partners on different deals we've met through the network. And so, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that can't be overstated enough as well. Even, Dan and I, the first wholesaling group that we were a part of, we've done flips with people in there. Like we do loans to people in there. Like a couple people in there that I would call some of my best friends, even though I've only met them in person a couple of times. I've just connected with them on enough different things. And, we're just like-minded enough that, we get on super, super well. No, that's super cool. So then, if you made your first purchase in May of 2021, you've bought quite a few in a relatively short period of time. Like, what's your goal with all these properties? Are you trying to like stabilize them and sell them? Or are you looking to keep these long term?
That's a great question. So 4 of our 7 deals are traditional value add syndications. Those always have pretty much a 5-year exit strategy, but anything can change depending on the markets. If we get really good interest rates again in 2 years, maybe we'll do a refi out in 3 years and give all the investors their money back. You can kind of change it, but typically we build it on a 5-year exit model. But then we also have 2 development deals, like ground up development, and 1 commercial redevelopment that we're doing right now too. And so those are all built on longer timescales.
Okay. So just for somebody who's listening that might not know what that means, can you explain what like a value add syndication is?
So like syndication from the get-go, or just...
Well, I guess like kind of how that works with like a value add with a multifamily property. Like we know what that is, but there's people that are listening that might not.
So we are looking for properties, typically about 100 units or more, that are, let's say, a C property in a B area. Maybe the owner hasn't raised rents in the last couple of years. Typically, we want to find it where market rent is, let's say, $900 for a 2-bedroom, but all the 2 bedrooms there are still at $700. In that instance, you could just do a play of getting the rents up to market, but you could also do a renovation play. So we go in and we have a business plan, because all of commercial real estate is based on the cap rate and NOI valuation model. So basically what you can do is either lower your expenses or increase your income, and you directly impact the value of the building. So basically we go in, we have a 5-year business plan. We say, we need $5 million to purchase this property. We need another $2 million for the renovation. So we're going to go out and raise $7 million over the course of 5 years. We're going to get 50% of the units renovated, get them up to this rent. We're going to do all these improvements to the exterior. During that time, we pay the investors a cash flow return from the rents. And then at the end, they get all their investment back plus the appreciation.
Perfect.
It sounds pretty simple.
I know, it sounds real simple. Yeah. And that is something that you hear a lot of, I would say, investors of larger assets say, is that, it's really, if anything, is actually easier than doing residential real estate, just because the players are so much more sophisticated and the process is, I guess, a lot less emotional.
Well, I can tell you about the deal that made me start changing my mind in the first place about residential. It was the last flip I ever did. It was probably the biggest flip I had ever done. I think I was into it for like $350 or something at the time. It felt really heavy. And after, a renovation that took 2 months longer than it was supposed to, and then I get it on market, and day 1 on market, I get a full price offer, and I'm ecstatic because I think I'm about to make $100,000 profit on this. Like, I can already see the dollar signs in my head. And sure enough, the realtor was an idiot. The buyer was an idiot. The realtor didn't condition their buyer as to what sort of things are normal or to be expected on an inspection report. This house had been touched top to bottom. Every single thing in the house was new. But of course, the inspector comes back and says, "Oh, you don't have like a grounded outlet over here," or whatever. And, just stupid little things like that. Buyer freaks out, bails. And then over the course of the next, I think it was 5 months, I continue to just see all that profit slipping away. But the asking price gets lower and lower and lower. And, and I think instead of making $100,000, I made like 35 on it. And I was just like, this sucks, because that's what happened. Somebody else down the street sold their house. It was like for $50,000 less than what I thought they should have sold it for. And guess what? Now my house is worth $50,000 less.
It's your new comp. Yep.
Yeah. Man. Yeah, that's tough. So, that makes sense. And I've heard similar from other people. So, but like the number one thing that I think scares away people from doing multifamily stuff, and even us at this point as well, is finding the deals. Yeah. Right. So, and that's the number one thing everyone that listens to this will ask is, how do you find them?
It's really hard right now. What I can tell you is, so I said it took 15 months to get the first deal. It took another 6 months to close the second one. But then once those doors were open, we closed like 5 deals in the first 6 months of this year. And it was just rapid fire. It was crazy. It was insanity. And then we haven't closed anything since July because the market started changing and, cap rates were insane. Interest rates got insane. And we're just kind of sitting back right now waiting because, I don't know a lot of people who are actively doing deals right now. It's a little bit crazy.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough out there. So I'm guessing, so you said once you did your first deal, the floodgates open. Now, are you using the same broker relationship in the same market, or are you actually going to several different markets? How's that working?
So we are for all our multifamily, we're in New Mexico and Texas. So
Okay.
Albuquerque, Las Cruces, San Antonio, and Dallas.
Okay. Gotcha. So kind of generally the same market areas, but I guess my point too is once you like did a deal, it sounds like you proved it out and then you got experience and then you got respect as well. And you probably got more shots at goal, as Mike would say.
The first deal is the hardest, and there is absolutely an element of it. Sorry, I realized the sun is going down over here, so it's getting dark.
Good.
You're good.
There's certainly an element of it that is just, confidence building. Once you close the first deal, this is no longer something that you talk about doing. This is something that you actually do. And once brokers know that you've closed a deal, then they have confidence that you can close on theirs too. Right? Because there's a million people who are trying to be first-time syndicators right now.
I'm sure of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that could be said the same across every kind of real estate business too. I mean, even wholesaling, like the hardest deal that we ever did was our first wholesale transaction, which took us 5 months and we like $25,000 in the hole. I made $7,500 on it. Like I'll always remember because I closed this guy via email. She was like a dentist, and he didn't want to talk on the phone, didn't want to text. And I'm emailing him back and forth. And I remember I texted him, I was like, dude, I think I got our first deal. He's like, no way. Like I literally, like how? Like that's impossible. But then after that, like literally a couple weeks later, we got 3 more. Right. And then all of a sudden you now have this rap sheet. You can go to other sellers or, you can go to even buyers who are trying to dispo stuff. You can say, well, these are all the properties that we've done and give you that much more credibility. So I guess for someone who was looking to get started though, or, because by the time this comes out, this episode will probably come out in probably January. So we could be in a completely different market condition by then. Who the hell knows? What would be the number one piece of advice you would give for somebody who's trying to find multifamily?
Multifamily? Well, so I would spend a lot of time getting good at one or two things. And it doesn't have to be, broker relations. It could be broker relations, but it could be raising capital, or it could be, sourcing the deals. Whichever one, just get really good at that one particular thing. Because if you can raise a bunch of capital and that's all you focus on, there will be people with deals who need that and are willing to give you a slice of it. And I wish I knew that sooner because I thought I had to do it all myself. I probably could have been in deals sooner than that 15-month period had I known I didn't have to do it all on my own. Right. I don't regret it at all because now we're in a position where we get to control the deal. Now, if you're the person who gets the deal under contract and you can control it, then you can command the lion's share of anything, but the deal can't happen without the money either. So,
Wow, that's great advice because my mind naturally goes to like, okay, I need to find a deal. I need to figure out how to get a bunch of money. I need to figure out how to manage the asset. But you're saying like, no, just get good at one of those things and then put it out there in the ether that you're good at that thing. And then other team members will come around you.
Yeah. And just network, go to a lot of things. It's funny. Before I mentioned how my college degree wasn't worth the piece of paper it was written on, but now I end up going to a lot of conferences, and in college I got really good at drinking and socializing. And that's
something.
Yeah, it's paying dividends, right? So you just
so cool.
Network the hell out of yourself, and good things will happen. Meet people.
Yeah. I mean, that is super valuable. One thing you can say about real estate and finance guys, they typically like to drink, they typically like to gamble, and they'll always have like some sort of recreational activity they have. For some that's like golfing, some people that's like mountaineering. There's always like a big mountaineering crew or something, and then this sort of line of business. I don't know why, but if you can hang, like that goes a super long way.
It does. And it's been funny for me because I'm like the 31-year-old guy at the bar who's got like maybe a bunch of like slightly less social, like older gentlemen behind me, and I got them lined up to do shots and things like that. So it's worked out well.
Nice.
There you go. That's funny. So now, very cool. So I guess, with the market turning, what's kind of next for you here over the next little bit?
Well, so we're actually, the name of my company is Nimble Capital Group, and we definitely stay true to that name because even though multifamily is our bread and butter, we're doing a couple of different things. We have 2 ground up developments, one of which is actually 20 single family homes, which we plan on selling about 15 of them and keeping 5 for a little Airbnb village. We're also looking at partnering with we have some people up in Michigan who are just absolutely crushing it with Airbnbs and lakefront properties, and we might be partnering with them. So we're doing a little bit of everything. We have a retail building that is a really interesting model. I'm just learning a lot now about how triple net leases work and all commercial retail, and doing lots of interesting things and just staying nimble, staying on our toes. And always looking for multifamily deals. They are just not penciling the way they used to at the moment.
Yeah, that is definitely true. And that's true across all real estate. So awesome. Well, right on, Michael. Well, you've done a lot of stuff in a very short period of time. It's super inspiring. And, I know Dan and I, we have a pretty decent residential portfolio, but we've talked about getting into multifamily for a while. And it's definitely inspiring to look at what you've done over the past couple of years. So to wrap up here, we're going to dive into our end of show questions. First, which is always the crowd favorite, what is your craziest real estate investing story? This can be a crazy seller. This can be a crazy transaction. It can be a big win.
Well, yeah, there was the time I was wholesaling in Florida, and I have quite a few actually now that I think about it, but I definitely walked into a house that had an entire family and camping in tents in the backyard. That was an eye-opening experience for me. When I bought the 4-unit building, the unit that I ended up moving into, the person who was living in it was a hoarder. So dealing with a hoarder unit the first time was really interesting. Took a very long time to get the smell of cat pee out of there. And walking multifamily units, you see some stuff. One unit was just like, the guy was like a professional graffiti artist, but he graffitied the entire inside, and it was almost cool. Like you could have filmed a music video in there, but you see drugs, you see a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So that hoarder house you bought, they leave anything?
No, nothing.
Mike's like, ooh, did you eBay anything?
Well, now every now and then you find stuff. Like we did one this year, hoarder house, and they left 2 sets of fully functional washers.
Oh, they did. I forgot about that.
Our guys went and scalped a bunch of, there was like snow blowers, power tools,
a baseball bat
like
our sales guy's name burned into it. Yeah, it was wild.
Literally. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. Our guys, they like text us. They're like, "Can we just like take this stuff?" We're like, "Yeah, go for it. I don't want it. We're just gonna throw it away.
Saves me time and money."
They're like, selling on Facebook Marketplace. We have a friend down in Texas who he found a suitcase full of like sex toys made out of Home Depot.
You want to reuse those? I don't know.
No, you don't. They were pretty gross. I saw the picture.
So. Yeah. So I'll text it to you afterwards. If anyone wants to see the picture, you can DM me on Instagram and I'll send it to you. But yeah, okay. So you did the ringer. You went through. It was also good stuff. Cool. So next question: what is one tip you would give to somebody who is looking to get started in real estate investing or who wants to take the real estate investing to the next level?
The biggest tip is just never give up, because there's so many ups and downs with real estate. But if you just don't stop doing it, even when it seems really hard, I promise you in 3 years you'll look back and be really grateful that you didn't stop.
I love that advice. Mike and I are always telling that to people. Like when you look back, you just are, it's unbelievable. As long as you're consistent, you showed up every day, how far you can come, how far you can go. It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're also on that to ourselves. Like
we have to,
This interview, we were on a call and we have a couple dogs that we're trying to figure out that we have like 250,000 ish tied up into, and realistically we're going to be stuck holding on to these properties right now because we can't sell them, and it sucks because we're expecting to get that money back plus profit, but at the same time we're like, the long term game, just refinance, rent them out, even just making a little bit of money. Hopefully sometime in the future we'll be able to get a windfall from it, but at least it is protected in quality assets. That's why we bought them. And, there is going to be some sort of shelter there, at least versus inflation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's better than $250,000 loss. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
we're just putting
they're
in
in a $250,000
savings account for a
loss,
bit.
and
Yeah, but even that
if it's in savings account, it's going to be.
You can have $250,000. Thankfully, I never lost money up till this point, but I came really close a couple of times, and you get faced with that reality, and you're like, oh shit, if I lose money on this, should I stop? You never just don't stop. Even if you lose 250,000, you'll make it back.
Mm-hmm. Show up every day, be consistent, and continue to learn too.
Yeah, exactly. So awesome. So, all right. So to wrap up, where can people follow along with what you're doing and potentially reach out to them if you'd like to do so?
So I'm actually just now back on social media for the first time in like 5 years. I don't like social media, but for business purposes and marketing purposes, it is a necessary evil. So you can find me on there. Instagram is Nimble Capital Group. Our website, nimblecapitalgroup.com. I just made a TikTok. It's Michael_NCG.
Oh man, did we lose it right at the very end?
Yeah.
There he is. He's back.
Oh, you're back. Sorry. Say your socials again. You froze right at the very end there.
So Instagram is nimble_capital_group. Website, nimblecapitalgroup.com. Very active on LinkedIn. You can just look up my name. Facebook, you can look up my name. And I just made a TikTok.
Nice.
I joined the
you can Mike, you can follow him on your TikTok account.
I've never even used my TikTok. Just my VAs have, because they're trying to push people towards my Instagram. But it's probably why I don't have any followers. Also, too, the problem I have with TikTok is because when you start it up, especially, it's like I'm like a 30-year-old male. Ask you're white, you're he, him,
it's
whatever,
a Chinese
right?
spyware, and they want everything.
It is, and I put all that in, and then the first thing that it shows, the only thing it ever shows, is girls shaking their asses.
The algorithm's so good, it's getting deep into your vortex, saying, "I know this is what you want."
But I don't need that every day on social media. It's not good for my marriage. It's not good for my mental health.
The problem is that the algorithm is really good. So at first, if you're a guy, it will start showing you, thought clips and just, sexy girls everywhere. But if you actually learns your interest, then it gets scary good, and it starts recommending really good videos of things you're actually interested in, and then you get lost in it, and it's horrible. I don't recommend it.
I like that. Great advice.
So all I'm hearing is it'll go from just being like a diversity of women to being women that are shaking their asses. So I definitely don't even want to go there.
It'll be your lookalikes of your wife, and you're like, "What the hell are you?" Or Madison, are you on TikTok?
Right. So awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Michael. It's so awesome to hear what you've done in such a short period of time. If you guys enjoyed this show and you want to hear more, please go and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, and go ahead and share it with someone who also wants to buy $70 million worth of real estate and 500 units in 2 years, just like Michael has, because that is quite an impressive feat. Besides that, you guys, go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. And you can go and check out the instantinvestorprogram.com if you want to learn how to find off-market deals, just like Dan and I do. So aside from that, thanks so much for listening, everybody, and talk to you next week.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And check us out at collectingkeyspodcast.com for tips and guides on starting your own real estate investment and wholesaling business.